Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Energy Quick Chat where we rub minds with stakeholders and players in the energy market. I'm your show host, Justina Okechukwu. Now, the ongoing power cuts in South Africa by state power utility company Eskom are sapping business confidence in the country, whose biggest industries such as mining depend on reliable access to cheap electricity. Meanwhile, big mining companies like Anglo-American Platinum and Sibanye Stillwater have warned that continued power rationing in South Africa at the current rate will have their consequences for the country. For more on this, I'm now joined by Peter Major, a mining investment expert and director at Mergence Corporate Solutions. Thanks so much for joining me on the show, sir.
You're very welcome, Justina.
Now, let's start with the flurry of resignations and replacements of Eskom's top officials in recent days. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are government doesn't seem to appreciate how devastating this is. If you look at Eskom's board, I think it's 15, 20 people, and they virtually replaced them all in less than 12 months. And if you look at how many CEOs Eskom has had in the last 20 years, I think they've had over 16. And can you imagine this kind of turnover, whether your child is going to school and the teacher keeps getting turned over so often, or the principal, or a president? It's really insane. And that's a lot of the problem at Eskom is you have these enormous boards that they're very hard to manage anyways. So it doesn't even matter if the board is composed of good people. When you got 15, 20 different people and they barely get to work with each other, and then they're totally replaced. So it's just one of the many problems that this government is causing unnecessarily to our SOEs, our state-owned enterprises. Eskom and Transnet in particular is revolving management from the top down, the CEO, the board, and people under them. It's devastating.
Now, was the 254 billion rand lifeline given to Eskom in the recent budget enough to get the troubled utility giant back on its feet effectively?
No, it can't get Eskom back on its feet. But what it is doing, it's saving Eskom from falling over the cliff. Unfortunately, because of government rules and regulations and appointments and constant interference and meddling, Eskom's debt went from probably 50 billion 15 years ago to over 400 billion. And to pay the interest on that is impossible for Eskom. And now, interest rates have gone up, I think 4% just the last 12 months. So that means it's even more impossible for Eskom to pay the interest. They can't get more borrowings. They can't get credit. So this saves them from grinding to a complete halt, but it doesn't get them back on their feet, not even close.
Now, beyond debt relief and changes on the board and the management, what else does Eskom need to regain its full operations, or the days of Eskom are finally over?
Justina, businesses in South Africa have a problem I don't believe any business in the world has, and it's called negative legislation that forces you to hire certain people, that forces you to give your business to certain people and groups. It is massive government interference like I don't think the world has ever seen. They have what they call scorecards. And so government, we know here, practices cadre deployment. That means they select who you're going to deal with, who's going to be your partner, who you're going to buy your goods from, who you're going to hire, who you're going to sell to. It's unbelievable. It's like putting a 100-kilogram backpack on an average man. It just collapses you to your knees. So what makes this legislation even worse is it breeds mafiosa. It breeds extortion. So whoever you operate with or where, the locals come and they beat on your door and they hold up these pieces of legislation. It says, look, you have to hire us. We're from this community. We're from this town. Look, you have to hire us. And the police are almost powerless to do anything about it because they are pseudo within the law. So this ANC government just created all this legislation literally the last decade or so. And business was already having it tough, but it's impossible to operate when you are being extorted constantly from all sides. So it's that legislation that needs to change. In fact, that legislation just needs to be removed.
Maybe one day we'll begin to look at the difference between Nigeria and South Africa when it comes to legislation. Now, a number of big mining companies on the GSC have been reporting on the negative impact of Eskom's load shedding. Now, give me a wider industry picture of the energy crisis, Peter.
Well, as you can imagine, electricity is necessary to do everything in life. And some aspects of mining don't need electricity quite as much as other aspects of mining. And I'll give you some big examples. If you're operating a gold mine 3 kilometers underground that has 20,000 men underground, you can imagine how important electricity is to keep the water pumps going, to keep the ventilation fans going, to keep the equipment running, to run that hoist, to get the men up and down, man and materials. So it is totally, absolutely necessary. You have constant, reliable electricity. Now, if you're operating an open pit mine, a lot of your machines are diesel operated. So they can drive around in a dump truck. Maybe the big shovel crane operates off electricity. Maybe you have a front end loader that runs off diesel. So if they have a blackout on power, they can handle it. Maybe men aren't going to die, but it's going to affect the production, even the coal washing plant. Or say Amplat's smelter, Amplat's concentrator. Maybe people don't die if there's a power outage, but can you imagine when your smelter just no electricity, or your mill? All those giant pieces of equipment stop, and they can plug up. The furnace can plug up. It's unimaginable unless you're there. So all of mining is being affected by these blackouts, but this has deterred anyone from doing underground mining. South Africa ran the world in underground gold mining. We used to produce 70% of the world's gold. We don't even produce 3. We used to have 550,000 men just on our gold mines. We don't even have 80,000 now. So no one's invested in a gold mine here in 15 years. It's too risky. It's guaranteed you're going to lose money, and you might even kill someone. So the consequences are gigantic for not having regular, effective electricity.
Wow. So the Eskom power crisis is hurting the mining sector, obviously. How will that impact the overall South African economy? Give me a full year report or scenario of what you think out there.
Mining is at least 8 or 9% of this country's GDP, at least. And you could say 10% for a round number, and you wouldn't be far off. Mining probably brings in 50% of South Africa's foreign exchange. You know, our gold, our platinum, diamonds, our iron ore, our coal. If you just look at those production figures, like coal, I think we used to export up to 75 million tons a year. And I think last year we didn't even do 55 million tons. That's 20 million tons of coal that didn't get exported that we could have got paid for. That's billions of dollars. Iron ore, I think very similar numbers. You know, on a good year, we could probably export 60, 65 million tons of iron ore. Now we're barely doing 45. So you're losing 20 million tons or close of iron ore and manganese at prices of between 120 a ton for the iron ore plus, and manganese double that per ton. So these are affecting South Africa. We have giant stockpiles building up at the mines. Okay, a lot of that's railroad trouble, but hey, our railroads run on electricity. They also run on tracks when they're not being tore up, and the copper wires for electricity aren't being tore up. So I don't want to sound over the top, but the criminality here is bordering on anarchy, and government just doesn't have a handle on it. If anything, They got to undo the regulations and let private industry take as much of this on as they can, from power plants to transport.
Wow, that's a lot to chew on right there. Thank you so much for those great insights and digging into the many troubles of ESCOM. Peter Major, mining investment expert and director at Mergence Corporate Solutions in Cape Town. Thank you so much for joining us. And that's it on your Energy Quick Chat today. We thank you for watching. Bye for now.